Hi guys, today I am doing a video on air guns, and it is going to be comparing PCPs and break barrels. So I am going to be using a Diana 34 Classic and a Umarex Origin in 22 caliber, both are 22 caliber of course, and so hopefully it will not be biased for you and you can find out which one is for you. Stay tuned. So the first thing is the price. Now PCPs generally will be from about $200 at the cheapest to maybe like $3,000 for some of the very most expensive ones. But the good news is the expensive ones have a lot of features that most people won't need except for people who do competition. And so generally you can get a pretty good PCP in the, I would say, $300 to $500 range. Most of them are good and work well and are pretty good quality. Now break barrels, you can definitely go a little bit lower to maybe like $60 or $70, but they aren't going to really be able to shoot that far and they won't have a whole lot of power. But break barrels in general are maybe a little bit cheaper, but probably the reason of that is because you can't really do a whole lot to make them more expensive other than put some sort of fancy stock or something like that on them. And so next I'm going to be looking at the durability. Now PCPs in general will not stand up to things like dust and rain and sand, because they have more moving mechanisms, and so they will probably get a little bit damaged more quickly. But in general, I have found PCPs to stand up to rain pretty well. The barrel on the Umarex Origin doesn't really get rust, and definitely have used it in rain and beat it around some, but in general I take good care of it, and it's so far been serving me well without much problems. And the break barrels obviously are a little bit more durable, especially if you get a Diana, which come from Germany, and so they would be a bit more trustworthy in harsh conditions. But generally, like pretty much 9 out of 10 or maybe even like 49 out of 50 days you'd be just fine with a PCP, and so it's not that big of a deal at all. Like, just take reasonable care of your air gun and it will last you a long time, as long as you get a good one. And so next is the accessories that you are going to have to buy in order to have a good shooting air gun. So if break barrels, there generally isn't a whole lot of accessories. You just need some pellets, generally light pellets, because they actually don't have a whole lot of power. And you will need a scope, and this is very important, a scope that will not be bounced off target, or like the crosshairs will move around from the harsh recoil of your break barrel, because break barrels have a big piston, single piston, that generates all the power, resulting in a bit of recoil, and it is always very weird going from a break barrel to shooting a PCP. It's like completely different for the recoil, because PCPs basically have none. And so generally you need a scope, like a Hawk scope, or you can definitely look up a list of brands that make good enough quality scopes. Right now I can't think of a whole lot of them. Some manufacturers will label scope as suitable for air guns. Generally they mean PCPs, that they can stand up to the harsh recoil for them. And so you definitely will have to shop around a little bit for a good scope. Maybe it won't be too bad for you. Generally the ones that come with the guns, it's very unfortunate, but they actually are not that durable. Like the ones that come with Dianas, I've found them to stand up for a little while, some stand up for a long time, but generally if you shoot about every day, they won't last very long. They'll just get ruined or thrown, the crosshairs will start getting thrown around by the recoil, and it gets even worse with brands like Gamma. Like after your first 100 rounds of shooting or whatever, your scope just becomes junk. So you definitely want the right scope or you will not have very good experience. So that's about all you need for break barrels. It can be a little bit heavy, so you might want to get a tripod for hunting. I personally hunt in Pennsylvania, so there's lots of trees where I can rest it on, or I can just sit in a sitting position where I can rest on my knees, so that's not a big problem at all. And yeah, you generally can't put on any silencers, so just forget about silencers. PCPs are generally a little bit louder anyway. So then with PCPs, you're going to have a little bit more accessories, of course. You're going to need a pump, and my Umarex Origin comes with a cheap pump, sadly, that works okay, but it's not like a very good quality pump, and it does lose some air while pumping, or it's not that as efficient as like a good quality pump would be. So you definitely want a good pump. I would recommend like an Air Venturi pump, or basically if it's over $100, it's probably gonna work good for you. And you probably will need a fill probe. The gun might come with it, hopefully it will, so you will want to check for that. And you might need an adapter because your pump hose might not fit onto your fill probe. And in case you're wondering, the fill probe goes into the gun and the pump hose attaches to the fill probe. You might need a female or a male quick adapter. Generally they cost around $30, a bit crazy in my opinion, but if you need them, you need them, and otherwise you won't be able to connect the two. So do your research and figure that out. They pretty much always say in the description of the air gun what you will need. And so for PCPs, the scope, you can basically buy any scope. Like I have a very cheap centerfire scope in my gun right now, and the glass is terrible. I have to have my eye just right to see completely through it, but it doesn't affect like my accuracy or anything, and I never use my scope, like pretty much never, to spot game. So I don't have any problems with a scope that's not really that clear. It holds 0, and so you just buy the scope you want to buy. Generally you want anywhere from maybe a 2 to 6, or I would definitely not go past like a 14 max power unless you're doing like over 100-yard shooting, because you don't actually need as much power of a scope as you think when it comes to hunting. So the next accessory you will need is extra magazines, because if you're like me and you carry it around in the field and you hunt with it, you definitely want an extra magazine or 2 or 3 or even 4. And so that is definitely a good investment. In my opinion, they're a bit expensive, but they're definitely worth buying, and they're usually pretty easy to find, not that hard to get. So then you will need, of course, good ammunition, which is pretty simple. Generally for my Umarex Origin, I like to go with at least 18 to maybe like 25 grain ammo, and that is gonna be probably from 900 to 800 or 750 feet per second, which is the best for accuracy. Generally I like to use about 21 grains for things like squirrel hunting and stuff that have a somewhat flat trajectory, yet they hit pretty hard. Then for things like starlings and house sparrows, or just plinking, the cheapest pellets I can find, which are usually Craftsman Premiers, at about like 14 something grains, even though they shoot too fast, and I don't feel like ruining my hammer spring tune, which isn't a big deal. I just don't like to go through a lot of pellets retuning it. So that's just what I use, and that's what we are going to be doing the accuracy tests with later. And so there isn't really a whole lot of other accessories you can buy. You might consider a tripod if you buy like a expensive FX gun that has a lot of weight. Basically, I would say 8 pounds and up, you will want a tripod to carry around so that way you can shoot off of it. Of course, you can get pretty lightweight PCPs, and you can get heavyweight PCPs, kind of like brake barrels. Brake barrels don't range as much. So that's about all the accessories you will ever need for your PCP. Also, I almost forgot this, you might want a moderator, and that is going to make your shot quieter. Now, if you're going to have like a 25 caliber or a gun any gun I would say that gives 50 foot-pounds or more, even like 40 or 45 pounds of energy, or if you are shooting like in a city or have neighbors that don't like much noise, or just hunting in a place where you just don't want like people to be hearing loud gunshots, then it's definitely a good investment. Make sure it's not going to clip. Get the next caliber up. It won't make a huge difference, because if it clips, you're going to have terrible accuracy and you will not be impressed at all. And they definitely are a bit expensive too, which my Umarex Origin doesn't have a threaded barrel, so I cannot screw one on, and so I just have to be with the shroud, which the shroud keeps it plenty quiet for my standards. So that is it. If you want, for the accessories, if you want a good target, let's use a cardboard box. I mean, you can get like a steel plinking target. Those are just fine. I just don't see much point in wasting money on targets. So now we get to the accuracy testing. So I think I kind of already know which one's gonna win, but I'm going to show it to you guys in person so you can, I guess not in person, but so you can just see for yourself the difference between a brake barrel or a PCP's accuracy. So we are going to be shooting 5-shot groups with both. I'm going to be using different pellets with both. I don't think, at least I know for the PCP, the pellets aren't the best it shoots, but so be it, because I ran out of those. So I'm going to be shooting at a target that is a ways out there. It would be the white target. So that's what I'm going to be shooting at today. And so I think I'm going to do the brake barrel first, and then I'm going to do the PCP. And I'm going to use these pellets. They're gamma pellets that seem to shoot as well. And last one. So there we go. Let's check them out. So we got a group right there. Not too bad. I would say probably about 2 inches or 2.5 inches across. So, you know, you can hunt with it, but you definitely have a chance of missing. So now I'm going to be shooting the PCP, and I have the target out there. Again, 30 yards. Should be pretty tight. We'll see how it does. This time we're just going to use the Crossman Premiers right there. So we'll see how it does. Again, 5-shot group. And that is 5. We'll check her out. And once again, I was shooting these pellets too fast for their weight. They should be moving at about 850 for best accuracy, but they actually are like in the upper 900s, which is way too fast. But as you can see, I can cover them up with my thumb. Probably about, I would say, a little over a ½ inch. Maybe closer to 3/4 inch group. And if you guys are wondering how good this gun is at longer ranges, or like with the better pellets, and I have found with my best pellets about the size my pinky finger could totally cover up the group at 45 yards, and that is pretty impressive. So you can definitely, or it can definitely do better with good pellets and maybe slower speeds. So now I'm sure you guys are wondering actually how much oomph they both can produce, and I'm gonna give you probably in 22 caliber, then some of the bigger calibers, because in 17 it varies a lot. It does in all the calibers, but basically the break barrels usually in 17, I would say 12 and under, which isn't too bad, but it's okay. And then the PCPs can deliver, I would say, a max of about, I don't know, 30, 35. That's definitely a high quality PCP that can do that. In general, you're probably going to get around like 15, maybe 20 for the average PCP. And then in 22 caliber, the break barrels, like the Diana I tested today, it gets about 16.5 foot-pounds, which isn't terrible, but you're going to have a lot of drop and just not the hunting punch that I like. Enough for squirrels and rabbits and close range groundhogs, pests, but that's about it. Whereas the PCPs can get you a lot higher, like up to 22 long rifle energy, and that is like 96 or so foot-pounds of energy for like the top FX guns out there can deliver that. Some custom guns can go even higher than that, but mainly they go from about, I would say, 30 to 60 for your average PCP, budget PCP that you're gonna get. So PCP's definitely a bit more power. I would say that you have definitely a good chance of being able to put down a raccoon, or in 22 caliber you would have to probably shoot like a fox or coyote in the head. Now for trapping, of course, both of those would work in 22 caliber at close range. So then the 25 caliber often a range in power from like 45 to, I would say, about 80 on your average PCP, on your average break barrel. I have never shot a 25 caliber, but probably around 40 is your, I don't think there is any that go up to 40. So then they probably get around 30 or so. Definitely 25 caliber wouldn't recommend, because it's going to drop like anything, and it's such a large diameter pellet that you need some speed behind it. So then 30 caliber, the PCPs will carry you up to I would say about 150 is the max they get. There might be a couple custom ones that go higher. On your average gun, they probably will get about 100 at the max. So you definitely get into some power. There is like one or so 30 caliber break barrels that might be able to get 30 or 40. I don't know. Break barrels kind of max out around 30-40 foot-pounds of energy. Then beyond that, it's all the PCP world. And you can get into calibers like 50, and there's some newer ones like 62 and 70 or so that can produce like 800 foot-pounds of energy, like enough for hunting very large game. So they're definitely, the PCPs definitely have the advantage over power. So now I'm gonna discuss about hunting, which you should use for hunting. Basically, the break barrels don't use for over 30 yards unless you know your gun is accurate and it can do the job. The Diana I've been using today isn't the most accurate break barrel out there, but it does decent, better than some. So I would recommend not going past groundhogs, like not into like coons and foxes. Just for trapping is for coons and foxes and coyotes is about the only thing. And so then PCPs, you know, of course you got all kinds of options. A lot of guns you can dial down for like pigeons and sparrows and starlings. You can dial up for things like coons and foxes. So you basically can hunt about everything on the planet. Of course not elephants, but you could definitely hunt about anything with the amount of varieties of power these guns have. You definitely are going to have to get some expensive guns to get like the top powerful ones, but they are, I would say, semi-affordable. So now, my recommendation, I would say PCP, because I've used both. The PCP is reliable, it shoots tight groups, it shoots flatter, it shoots faster, it has more energy, and it just seems to be my type of gun. Probably PCP for hunting and like some competition, or where you have to have precise shots. Like in hunting, I always like to have good precise shots, especially for things like squirrels that are best to shoot in the head. And then break barrels, I would say use it for having fun plinking, a time when you don't have a huge backyard, or it'll be too easy to hit the targets with your PCP. Of course, you can always go to precision rifle, where you set amount of time, or you shoot certain targets and you try to do it in a certain amount of time. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, make sure to put it in the comments below, or if there's something you enjoy or want to see, put it in the comments also, and make sure to click subscribe and all that. Thanks for watching.